It's never the big mistake. It's not the argument, not the words, not the moment you think ruined everything. It's a reaction you didn't even notice you had. A small shift, a subtle response, something you did automatically, without thinking. And once she felt it, her energy changed. Not loudly, quietly. Because this reaction doesn't push her away instantly. It repositions her feelings. Stay with me till the end, because once you recognize this reaction, you'll stop losing attraction in moments that feel harmless. Subscribe and comment ready. The next sections show how to correct this without pulling away or forcing control. Why this reaction matters more than words. Men believe attraction responds to effort. Women respond to emotional safety. And emotional safety isn't created by doing more. It's created by how you respond when things feel uncertain. That's why this reaction matters. It tells her whether she can relax, or whether she needs to protect herself emotionally. The moment this reaction appears, this reaction doesn't show up when things are perfect. It shows up when replies slow down, energy becomes mixed, clarity disappears, attention feels uncertain. These moments are neutral. Your response to them is not. What most men do without realizing it. When uncertainty appears, men shift internally. They lean forward emotionally. They monitor more closely. They adjust themselves to regain certainty. They don't say anything wrong. They don't act desperate. But their emotional posture changes. And she feels that immediately. Why women feel this before men do? Men track behavior. Women track emotional state. She feels tension under calm words, urgency behind politeness, unease beneath patience. Not consciously, instinctively. That instinct tells her whether connection feels safe. The reaction that pushes her away. The reaction is emotional leaning, not physical distance. Not chasing, leaning. Your mood starts depending on outcomes. Your calm depends on reassurance. Your presence shifts from grounded to alert. That reaction doesn't look wrong. It feels wrong to her nervous system. Why this feels like pressure to her? Pressure doesn't come from asking questions. It comes from emotional dependence. When she senses your emotional balance depends on her responses, she feels responsible for you. Responsibility kills attraction, not because she doesn't care, but because caring starts to feel heavy. The first sign she noticed you weren't fully yourself anymore. Your tone shifted slightly. Your timing changed. Your presence felt less settled. You may not remember the moment. She does. Not in detail. In feeling. Why men misread what happens next. After this reaction, men notice distance. Short replies. Less warmth. Slower energy. They assume the distance caused the problem. It didn't. The reaction came first. The distance came after. This is not about becoming cold. It's not about pulling away. It's not about acting uninterested. It's about keeping your emotional center inside yourself. Most men lose that center without realizing it. What this reaction communicates silently. Without words, it tells her, I'm not fully steady when things are unclear. That message doesn't destroy attraction. It weakens it. And weakened attraction becomes cautious attraction. Why this reaction is so common? Because men are taught to fix uncertainty, to restore balance, to regain clarity, to secure connection. But attraction doesn't respond to fixing. It responds to self-regulation. What this moment decides one thing. Does she feel emotionally free around you? Or emotionally responsible for you? Everything else flows from that. Now we go deeper. Because even men who recognize this reaction often replace it with something just as damaging. There are responses that feel controlled, but signal insecurity. Understanding those responses and knowing what to do instead is what stops attraction from slipping away. That's what we break down next. Why this reaction feels different to her. Attraction doesn't disappear because a man cares. It disappears because the way he cares changes. When emotional leaning appears, the energy shifts from grounded to reactive. That shift is subtle, but powerful. She doesn't analyze it. She feels it. Her nervous system picks up on the change and adjusts automatically. That adjustment is what men later experience as distance. what she is actually responding to. She isn't reacting to your words. She's reacting to your emotional state. When your calm depends on reassurance, she senses instability. When your confidence depends on her behavior, she senses pressure. Pressure doesn't feel aggressive. It feels heavy. And heavy emotions make her pull back without explanation. The second reaction that makes it worse. After emotional leaning shows up, many men make a second mistake. They try to compensate. They become more polite, more careful, more agreeable. They soften their edges to avoid conflict. But this removes polarity. Polarity isn't dominance. It's contrast. When you flatten your energy to keep peace, attraction loses tension. Why over-adjusting backfires? Over-adjusting tells her one thing. You changed, so I changed. That communicates dependence. Attraction thrives when a man remains himself through uncertainty, not when he reshapes himself to regain comfort. The female mind doesn't trust stability that requires constant adjustment. The invisible line men cross. There's a moment when effort turns into self-abandonment. Men don't notice it because it feels responsible. It feels mature. It feels like doing the right thing. But emotionally, it feels like you stepped off your center. Once that happens, she stops leaning in. Not to punish you, to protect herself. Why women don't explain this? Women rarely explain why they pull back at this stage. Because nothing obvious happened. You didn't say anything wrong. You didn't act badly. You simply stopped feeling grounded. And feelings don't need explanations to change. What emotional self-regulation looks like. Self-regulation isn't silence. It isn't distance. It's staying emotionally consistent when things feel unclear. Your tone stays even. Your presence stays warm. Your pace stays steady. You don't rush clarity. You don't chase reassurance. You remain engaged without leaning. That steadiness is what attraction responds to. Why this response restores balance. When you stop reacting emotionally, pressure dissolves. She feels less responsible for your state. Her nervous system relaxes. Relaxation opens the door to curiosity again. Curiosity is what pulls her back toward you. The shift that follows when you get this right. When you hold your center, something changes. Her tone softens. Her responses feel less guarded. She re-engages naturally. Not because you pushed, because nothing felt unsafe. This is how attraction reorganizes back toward you. Why men misread this stage. Men expect attraction to return loudly. It doesn't. It returns quietly, through small shifts, subtle warmth, gentle reconnection. If you chase confirmation here, you undo it. The difference between confidence and control. Confidence allows space. Control tries to remove uncertainty. One invites attraction. The other kills it. When you let uncertainty exist without reacting, you signal emotional strength. That strength is attractive. What to watch in yourself. At this stage, don't watch her behavior. Watch yours. Ask yourself, did my tone change today? Did I act to get reassurance? Did I adjust myself to restore comfort? Those answers tell you more than her messages ever will. Why this is so hard for most men? Because men are wired to fix, to solve discomfort, to restore order. But attraction doesn't respond to fixing. It responds to self-containment. That's why this reaction pushes her away, and why correcting it brings her back. Now we reach the stage where most men undo everything again. Even after correcting this reaction, there are behaviors that feel safe, but signal weakness. Understanding those behaviors, and knowing how to avoid them, is what keeps attraction from slipping a second time. That's what we break down next, where most men lose attraction without knowing. At this stage, nothing looks wrong. There's no argument, no tension, no obvious distance. From the outside, things seem stable. But this is exactly where attraction quietly slips. Not because of what you do, but because of what you stop doing internally. Why stability can turn into weakness. Stability feels safe, so men relax. They stop choosing their emotional posture. They stop leading the energy. They start assuming connection will maintain itself. But attraction doesn't survive on comfort alone. It survives on presence. When presence fades into autopilot, attraction follows. What she is sensing now. She's no longer watching how you handle uncertainty. She's watching whether you stay awake. Not alert, not tense. Awake. Does your energy still feel intentional? Does your presence still feel grounded? Or does it feel familiar, predictable, flat? Women feel this shift immediately. The mistake that feels like maturity. Many men think this stage means settling in. They become easier, more agreeable, less expressive. They call it peace. But emotionally, it feels like withdrawal, not distance, but disengagement. And disengagement kills polarity. Why women don't say anything here? Because there's nothing to complain about. You're still kind, still present, still responsive, but attraction doesn't die from bad behavior. It fades from lack of emotional direction. Women don't argue about feelings they can't explain. They adjust instead. The quiet signal attraction is fading. It's not silence. It's neutrality. She's there, but not leaning. She responds, but doesn't invest. That's not rejection. That's reassessment. Why men misread this moment? Men see neutrality as calm. They think, things are good now, so they invest less emotionally. They stop setting tone. They stop leading interaction. That confirms the shift she already felt. The difference between comfort and polarity. Comfort feels safe. Polarity feels alive. Attraction needs both. When comfort exists without polarity, connection flattens. A grounded man keeps polarity alive without creating tension. A passive man removes polarity to avoid risk. Women feel the difference instantly. What emotional leadership looks like here? Emotional leadership isn't control. It's intention. You stay engaged without chasing. You stay warm without leaning. You stay present without depending. You don't assume attraction is secured. You continue choosing your emotional state. Why this stage breaks good men? This stage doesn't hurt careless men. It hurts good men. Men who value peace, avoid conflict, don't want to pressure. They remove emotional charge unintentionally. They think they're being respectful, but attraction doesn't respond to respect alone. It responds to contained intensity. What holding attraction requires now? At this stage, attraction requires one thing: consistency of presence, not more effort. Not less emotion. Consistency. Your energy doesn't spike. Your energy doesn't flatten. It remains grounded and alive. What this feels like to her? It feels safe, but not boring. It feels calm, but not dull. It feels like she can relax without losing desire. That combination is rare. The decision she makes quietly. At this point, she's deciding, does this man stay emotionally awake? Or does he fade into comfort? She doesn't verbalize this. She feels it. And her behavior follows that feeling. Why men notice too late? Men wait for obvious signs. Arguments, distance, cold behavior. But attraction usually fades without drama. By the time behavior changes, the emotional decision already happened. Now we reach the final layer. Because once attraction reaches this point, one last mistake determines whether it stabilizes or slowly dissolves. Understanding the psychology behind this, knowing what to do right now, and correcting the mistakes men make at the end, that's what brings everything together. That's what we close with next. The psychology behind this reaction. The reaction that pushes her away doesn't feel dramatic because it isn't. It's emotional dependence showing up quietly. A woman's nervous system is wired to scan for one thing first. Can this man regulate himself when emotions shift? When your emotional state depends on clarity, reassurance, or outcomes, her body feels it before her mind does. That feeling tells her something important. Not that you're wrong, not that you're weak, but that connection might require emotional management. And when a woman feels she has to manage a man emotionally, attraction doesn't grow, it contracts. This is biology, not judgment. Attachment requires safety. Safety requires emotional self-containment. That's the psychology underneath everything you've heard so far. What you do right now, the correction is internal, not behavioral. You stop reacting to uncertainty. You stop trying to stabilize connection. You stop tracking her emotional temperature. Instead, you anchor yourself. Your tone stays steady. Your pace stays yours. Your presence stays warm without leaning. You allow uncertainty to exist without rushing to remove it. That doesn't make you passive. It makes you grounded. You engage naturally. You don't over-adjust. You don't withdraw to protect your ego. You remain centered. That single shift removes pressure immediately. Your mistake when you apply this. Most men misunderstand this stage. The first mistake is becoming distant. They hear, "Don't lean," and pull back emotionally. They reduce warmth. They close off expression. That's not self-containment. That's avoidance. The second mistake is performing calmness. Men try to act unaffected while feeling anxious inside. They suppress emotion instead of regulating it. Women feel the tension underneath instantly. The third mistake is assuming the danger is over. Once things stabilize, men relax emotionally. They stop leading presence. They drift into autopilot. That's where attraction quietly fades again. Why these mistakes feel invisible? Because nothing explodes. There's no argument, no confrontation, no clear rejection, just a gradual emotional shift. Men look for signals. Women respond to feelings. By the time behavior changes, the emotional decision already happened. The correct resolution. The resolution isn't control. It isn't distance. It isn't effort. It's emotional leadership. You lead by regulating yourself. You stay engaged without clinging. You stay warm without depending. You stay present without forcing outcomes. If she leans in, you meet her calmly. If she pauses, you don't chase. If things feel unclear, you don't panic. You let attraction reveal itself naturally. That posture restores balance. Why this restores attraction? Because attraction grows where there is freedom and safety. Freedom from managing your emotions. Safety in your presence. When you remain steady regardless of outcome, her nervous system relaxes again. Relaxation opens the door to attachment. Not suddenly, but sustainably. The quiet shift that follows. Handled correctly, something changes. She stops guarding. She stops evaluating. She becomes emotionally available without trying. Not because you convinced her, but because nothing felt unsafe. That's when attraction stabilizes. Final word. This reaction didn't push her away because you cared too much. It pushed her away because your emotional center shifted outward. When you understand that, you stop fixing and start leading. This isn't about controlling women. It's about mastering your emotional posture. That's what keeps attraction alive. If this gave you clarity, let me know in the comments. Subscribe if you want calm, honest psychology that helps you move with confidence instead of confusion. And before you go, watch the next video on your screen. It explains the moment men think they're being supportive, but accidentally destroy attraction instead. Your growth doesn't come from doing more. It comes from staying centered. That's what this channel is about.